We are following breaking news right here on CBS Sports HQ. Antonio Brown tweeting, "Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate the Patriots." Multiple reports saying that they released Antonio Brown. His time in New England had lasted one game. Patriots statement, quote, "The New England Patriots are releasing Antonio Brown. We appreciate the hard work of many people over the past 11 days, but we feel that it is best to move in a different direction at this time." All right, let's bring in Will Brinson, Pick Six Pod host to CBS Sports HQ. And Will, here we go. One and done for Antonio Brown. What are your thoughts here?
Well, Tommy, I wrote about this on Friday afternoon when sort of looking at it through the microscope of Bill Belichick's press conference. He was very short and clipped with the media. He was asked if Antonio Brown would be on the roster, if Antonio Brown would play on Sunday. And he said he's on our roster. But when you looked at what was going on with an SI report, a Sports Illustrated report from Robert Klemko that brought forth new allegations from someone who had come forward with a claim of sexual assault, for lack of a better phrase, by Antonio Brown, the painter in that case, and had text messages where Antonio Brown had sent a text message to that person and some of his business managers, and that person, the accuser, claimed that she felt intimidated in a letter to the NFL. That changed things entirely, Tommy, because what that did was it opened up Antonio Brown to the possibility of being on the commissioner's exempt list and opened him up to the possibility of being suspended based on the personal conduct policy, which has a clear set of language in there about intimidation. And so I think this set of circumstances really ratcheted things up, and it sort of forced the Patriots' hand, and it became worth more trouble to the Patriots than what he was going to produce on the field, or they saw the writing on the wall of what was going to happen down the road, and they decided to cut ties with Antonio Brown. It begs the question, Tommy, and I think we asked this last Friday, why are you playing him, Bill Belichick? Why are you putting Antonio Brown on the field against the Dolphins in a game you knew you would win? You were 20-plus point favorites. You were going to win that game by 20-plus points. You won 43-0. You didn't need Antonio Brown. What was the point in playing him? That's the biggest question I have left, aside from will Antonio Brown find another job in the NFL this year? And my guess would be no, because he became too much trouble for Bill Belichick.
It's interesting because you talk about our conversation last week and even this week against the Jets where they were heavily favored, right? It's crucial because what we learned from that game, they were really trying to get him acclimated into the system. He got those 3 targets in that first drive. He obviously got the touchdown. There was one more miscommunication on a back shoulder thing. I mean, what did we learn up until today that they really wanted him to be a part of this team, evidenced by that South Florida game with Miami?
Well, I mean, look, from a strict football perspective, there's a reason why Bill Belichick pursued Antonio Brown when the Steelers were trying to trade him and offered up a first-round pick for Antonio Brown to get him from the Steelers. And there's a reason why Bill Belichick, enthusiastically pursued him once he was released by the Raiders. It's because Bill Belichick looks at Antonio Brown and sees a Hall of Fame wide receiver, a would-be Hall of Fame wide receiver, or a Hall of Fame talent, if you will, who is a perfect fit for what the Patriots do on offense. He's an incredible route runner. He can do those option routes that they want Tom Brady to work with, and he would take their offense to the next level. I mean, the calculation was fairly simple. If Antonio Brown could come into New England and keep his act together and stay out of trouble and stay on the field, he would make the New England Patriots offense substantially better. Once it became clear that Antonio Brown's off-field actions and off-field behavior and off-field issues were going to outweigh his on-field performance, it no longer became worth it for Bill Belichick to employ Antonio Brown. Bear in mind, the Patriots also had on Monday, September 23rd, a $5 million signing bonus due to Antonio Brown. So I would assume that they see the writing on the wall from a league-wide perspective and that they didn't want to risk having him on the roster in case something else came down or paying him the $5 million and flushing that money down the toilet for a guy who might not be able to play. Remember, he still gets paid even if he's on the commissioner's exempt list. It's possible the league could have taken that approach with Antonio Brown, so he would still be being paid by the Patriots but not be actually playing in games. So you have to look at it from a baseline calculus from Bill Belichick. Is his performance on the field worth it? And at the end of the day, it wasn't.
All right, Will Brinson breaking it down here. Sit tight, Will. We'll join you as well coming up at the bottom half of the hour. I also want to bring in another senior NFL writer. That would be Pete Prisco over the phone. Pete, there's a latest development here with Antonio Brown being released by the Patriots. Your initial reaction is what?
Good riddance. I mean, let's be real. I mean, there's so many issues going on with this guy in life, not just from a football standpoint. It was bad enough last year from a football standpoint when he, didn't show up in Week 17 and quit on his teammates, and then he did that whole mess in Oakland, the helmet thing, and not showing up, and everything else. But come on, this is more about than just football, and I think the New England Patriots should be applauded here for getting rid of him after, the text came out yesterday in Sports Illustrated's article. Enough is enough. The guy needs help. I mean, obviously there's issues going on outside of football, and this is bigger than football.
I want to ask you the same thing I asked Will. I mean, before these latest developments over the past 24 hours, it seemed like they were really trying to get him acclimated and involved. You saw that evidence from the Miami game, and Will had mentioned, this was a game that they didn't really need him. You could even say that here with the Jets this week. What did you think about what you saw, at least on the field, of what they were trying to do, have AB be a part of that Patriots squad?
Oh, there was no question they set out last week to get him to football and get him involved early. And look, he was going to be a big part of their offense. He showed last week that he could still play at a high level and, caught the touchdown pass from Tom Brady. But at some point, the New England Patriots been through a lot with players and, going back to Aaron Hernandez. And at some point, you just got to say enough is enough. And I give them credit for doing that. They probably should have done their due diligence a little more before signing him. But the problem is, for me, I think this is one of those situations where they said, nope, we're not going to tolerate it. You got to go.
Pete, you'd mentioned Antonio Brown and perhaps what kind of help he needs here. What do you think about his chances of finding another team? He went from the Oakland Raiders, then the Patriots gave him another shot. Do you think another team will give him another shot?
Well, let's put it this way. When he was available last time, I texted a couple GMs and asked them if they were interested in Antonio Brown at that time, and they laughed. They said, no chance. And so I think it's going to be tough for him to find a job. He's going to have to, mend his ways and show people that he is a changed man, I think, before everybody gives him another opportunity. And let's face it, we're a forgiving society. At some point, maybe he comes back and he shows people that he is indeed a changed man. But until then, I think he's got to prove to teams, and as talented as he is, he's not worth the aggravation.
All right, that's Pete Prisco joining us over the phone. Pete, certainly appreciate it. Again, the Patriots have released Antonio Brown. Stay right here on CBS Sports HQ. When we come back, we'll also take a look at the fantasy perspective. Jamie Eisenberg, Dave Richard will join me here on set next. We continue to follow breaking news here at CBS Sports HQ. The Patriots have released wide receiver Antonio Brown. 11 days, one game, one touchdown, and here seen wearing number 1, ultimately 17, but Antonio Brown's time over in New England. Time to talk from a fantasy perspective. Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard. And guys, look, I mentioned the time length that Antonio Brown had spent with New England, and the one touchdown I mentioned against Miami. It looked like they were given a conscious effort to get him going. Tom Brady. Jamie, your thoughts here with the latest news?
Well, if this was the only game he's ever going to play with the Patriots, which is clear, the last game that he may play in the NFL, at least he caught a touchdown from somebody other than Roethlisberger, because that's the only time that's ever happened for him. Yeah, they were trying to. I mean, it was an effort on their part to make this work and to make him part of their offense and to help them win another championship. But clearly everything that's gone on with him off the field is too much for the Patriots to have to deal with when Bill Belichick is walking out of press conferences, which he never likes to be at to begin with. You know that something is clearly at play here, that they're just tired of it, and they should have been. I mean, it's just so much of a distraction for a team that doesn't need it. He's at a position of need that they don't have to worry about, so it's just one of those things where goodbye, good riddance, and now for fantasy, you just don't have to worry about it anymore. You can be all in again on Julian Edelman, all in again on Josh Gordon. If you're stuck, go look for Philip Dorsett, who's owned in only 13% of leagues on CBS Sports, had the 2-touchdown game in Week 1 against Pittsburgh. So this does not impact Tom Brady whatsoever. He's still going to be a great fantasy quarterback. And the other two guys, specifically Edelman and Gordon, they're must-start guys again.
I'll go the other way. I think it does affect Tom Brady, because now we're taking away one of these amazing receivers away from him. It's going to knock him down a little bit. You can't look at him as a top 5 type of fantasy quarterback anymore. You want to call him a top 12 quarterback.
He was bad in Week 1 against Pittsburgh?
He was great in Week 1 against Pittsburgh, but I don't know if we were expecting that all season long. But
yeah, once he got Antonio Brown, it was good.
When you put Antonio Brown on the field with him, it's outstanding types of upside from him. 3-4 touchdown upside. That's gone now. It doesn't mean that he's going to be, sinking off the trade chart or anything like that. But I think it is going to limit him to more of a 250, 275-yard type of passer, 2 or 3 touchdowns max each week. Still top 12, not top 5 anymore.
Yeah, 275 and 3. That's a bad day.
It used to be a great day in fantasy, and now it's okay. You see what Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are doing.
Dave, what did you think about, obviously, now with Antonio Brown out there, Demaryius Thomas was sent to the New York Jets as well, and you mentioned some other things who maybe potentially benefits from a fantasy perspective with no AB in New England.
Well, certainly the wide receivers have to benefit. And Josh Gordon, we were taking him in round 5 or so in fantasy drafts back in August, thinking he was going to be the top outside threat, the downfield threat for this Patriots offense. And I think he's right back in that room right now. A lot of people were wondering, what do I do with Josh Gordon, with Antonio Brown on the field? Well, now if you got him and you held on to him all this time and you didn't lose patience with him, you're going to benefit for the rest of the season. And Edelman is just the security blanket. This is great news for Julian Edelman. You saw last week that Antonio Brown was taking targets away really from both these guys, but especially Edelman. Now all those targets are going to come rushing right back to him. He's right back in line to come close to 100 catches this year.
Jamie, what if you have Antonio Brown, who was given a second team, then a second chance with another team? Obviously, there's uncertainty surrounding his future right now. What should you do if you have Antonio Brown currently on your roster?
You drop him. You heard what Pete said. There's no team that's going to give this guy another chance. This is going to take up a roster spot for you that you don't need to worry about. He's done. There is no way you're going to see him in the NFL again in 2018. Not a chance. Get him off your fantasy roster. Maybe Dynasty Leagues you want to hold on just to see what happens. But there is no chance he's playing again in 2018.
And I bet we could go back and forth for 5 minutes on wide receivers that you can go and pick up right now that are going to carry value for you for the rest of the season. So if you have Antonio Brown, you lost him, you need a replacement, I'll start with Deebo Samuel of the 49ers. This was Jamie's guy right after the draft, and I think he's going to be the 49ers guy, and he's still out there in over 50% of CBS Sports leagues.
Go look at the guy that may be replacing him in Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson, who's going to start now. There's from 0% to 100%. Any receiver available right now, drop Antonio Brown and go pick him up. It's done. It's over. This morning when we found out what happened last night, the first thing that I said was, if anybody sends you a trade offer for Antonio Brown, accept it immediately. Immediately. We had somebody ask, Cooper Kupp or Antonio Brown. It was a no-brainer. This was the inevitable situation after all this happened to him.
All right. How do you guys view now the Patriots moving forward, just in terms of
They're
on
done.
the football
They're
field?
never going to win a game.
Oh, come on now.
I mean, then nothing's going to change. This was such a luxury for them. Pencil them in, AFC Championship game. Chiefs on the other side. That's what's happening. I mean, it's just, it was great to have Antonio Brown if he was going to work out. They don't need him. They're not going to miss him at all.
Which they should do when they released him today.
I think it will make defenses not fear the pass as much as before, because that offensive line, that's where they're going to attack now. There are a lot of question marks on that offensive line, but it's really not going to matter, because who else is even going to compete with them? Buffalo? Is Buffalo going to compete with them? No.
Look,
anybody from the AFC North? Maybe Baltimore?
The 16-0 thought now gets knocked down a little bit because they're not as perfect offensively. But again, it went from their receiving core has really come full circle, because when the draft process started, it was Edelman and Dontrell Inman and Maurice Harris, and they added N'Keal Harry. And now maybe this allows N'Keal Harry, if he goes on short-term IR, to eventually make a return at the end of the year. But again,
they were stacked.
When they're going to get Ben Watson back, who's going to make an impact slightly, not Antonio Brown level impact, but help them in the passing game. They're going to get better play out of Philip Dorsett, who scored 2 touchdowns in the season opener against Pittsburgh, and will probably produce just as good as Antonio Brown. Not to the same heights, but again, when you put the targets in perspective, Edelman's going to get his numbers. Gordon's going to get his numbers. Brown's numbers were always going to be capped, because they're not going to throw, just completely ignore the other guys. So this does not change anything. They're still going to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Doesn't change anything. Doesn't change any. Brady's still a great fantasy quarterback. Gordon and Edelman benefit. That's the biggest difference right now.
Dorsett too.
And Dorsett too, yes.
All right.
And again, 13% ownership on CBS Sports. Go take a look if you're stuck at receiver.
Dave and Jamie, certainly appreciate it. Thanks for the time. As always, when we come back, continuing coverage again. Antonio Brown no longer a Patriot. We continue to talk about that here on CBS Sports HQ. Don't go anywhere. Continue to follow breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Antonio Brown no longer a member of the New England Patriots. The team has released the star wide receiver. He acknowledged it today on Twitter just moments ago, saying thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate at the Patriots. The team also issuing a statement today. The New England Patriots are releasing Antonio Brown. We appreciate the hard work of many people over the past 11 days, but we feel that it is best to move in a different direction at this time. And for more on Antonio Brown and the situation regarding his now status as an NFL player, we welcome in the Pick Six Pod guys, Will Brinson, John Breach, and Ryan Wilson. Guys, thanks for joining us here. And Will, I'll give you first word once again, your thoughts here on AB no longer a member of the Patriots.
Yeah, Tommy, I wrote about it this morning after in the wake of Bill Belichick's press conference. But when you look at the report from Sports Illustrated that involves the phrase intimidation, and I won't go into the specifics of what happened, but suffice to say there is credible evidence with a lawyer sending a letter claiming her client feels intimidated by Antonio Brown. Go read the personal conduct policy. In there is specific language stating that similar forms of intimidation relative to stalking or harassment are subject to discipline under the personal conduct policy, which means that Antonio Brown, with these latest allegations of off-the-field behavior, opened himself up not just to the commissioner's exempt list, but also to be suspended by the NFL throughout the course of the investigation. Given the way this has played out, I feel it was likely the NFL was going to put him on the commissioner's exempt list, which would make him ineligible to play moving forward, but would make him eligible to get paid moving forward, which means the Patriots and Bill Belichick would be paying a player who is not on their roster. They could cut him before the 9/23 signing bonus, and it made a lot of sense to do so, given that he is no longer worth the hassle that he is creating for the Patriots and Bill Belichick off the field.
I would just point out that Michael McCann tweeted this. He's a lawyer who contributes to SI.com. That the difference between what Antonio Brown did with those texts that Brinson's referring to and what happened before that is that text was sent while on the Patriots payroll. And that got Bill Belichick's attention. We saw Bill Belichick in the press conference today. As upset as he's ever been, he left halfway through, refused to answer questions about AB, and I think that was a turning point after those texts were sent last night, or at least revealed last night, that this was not worth the hassle. And I would just point out that going into the season, before they even knew AB was coming to New England, the Patriots were a 13 or 14-win team. AB maybe gave them half a win. Is he worth that half a win, given that they're still going to win the division, probably still go to the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I think they did the right thing, and now the question becomes, where does AB land?
Yeah, and look, Bill Belichick hates distractions, and that's literally all Antonio Brown had been since he signed with the team. He signed that contract on Monday, September 9th. Less than 24 hours later, there was the lawsuit filed against him, and then we had this next accusation of sexual misconduct, and I'm sure the Patriots they kind of were hinting maybe they're going to let him play, but then like Ryan just said, you have proof that he is out maybe sending harassing text messages while on the Patriots payroll, and that's something you can't overlook. But the one thing that is unique about the situation is that Antonio Brown seems to be leaving gracefully. We saw an ugly divorce from the Steelers. We saw an ugly divorce from the Raiders. But, you know, his text message says, hey, thanks, New England. Maybe that's because he's hoping to get back sometime next year if he ever plays in the NFL again. But this was a move the Patriots definitely had to make.
All right, Ryan had referenced, of course, Bill Belichick earlier this afternoon. We actually have a part of that media availability. Let's play that clip real quickly here.
Bill, another headline today focusing on Antonio Brown. Does any of this at all affect his status with the team?
Yeah, I think I've already addressed this, so we're going to get ready for the Jets here. Happy to answer any football questions, but the rest of it, I'm done with the rest of it.
Jerry, is there ever a point where some off-field stuff is enough?
So, yeah, I'm good. Okay, thank you. Well,
There again, that was Bill Belichick earlier this afternoon. Will, I'm going to ask you again, sort of the thought process was, again, this in theory was supposed to have Antonio Brown join a very good team, the reigning champs. We saw that against Miami, getting force-fed the ball early, and then it all unraveled, and now we're talking about, of course, here on HQ.
Yeah, and look, Tommy, I think it is highly unlikely we're going to see him playing anywhere else anytime soon. I mean, the NFL, because he has been released, now can conduct an investigation not into just the text messages that were brought up by Sports Illustrated, not just into the allegations that were previously brought by Sports Illustrated through the accuser, the anonymous accuser, but also into the civil lawsuit that is pending in which Antonio Brown is accused of sexual assault and rape. The NFL does not have a timeline to expedite this investigation when Antonio Brown is not on the team. And if they are taking their time in investigating the situation, and they should do that, they should do a thorough job of investigating it. It is a very, very big deal. If they are in the process of that investigation, it stands to reason he will be put on some sort of list to prevent other teams from signing him, or at the very least, teams will understand that signing him is a bad idea. I would not expect him to end up on anybody else's roster. If there is one team that you can sign with, and then you somehow manage to work your way out of their good graces in a span of like 10 days, and you don't go anywhere else, it's the New England Patriots.
Yeah, right now, Antonio Brown is absolutely untouchable for every reason that Will just mentioned. You cannot possibly bring him in with everything he has hanging over his head right now. That would be absolutely crazy for another team to do. So I don't see any way he's possibly on the field again in 2019. Who knows what happens after that? Maybe he ends up on the commissioner's exempt list. Maybe the NFL finds some evidence that they decide they have to suspend him. And so his future is absolutely up in the air. We might not see him play another NFL snap. He's above 30. He's getting old. He's at the end of his prime. So he's got a lot of personal things he's got to get worked out. So, I mean, this is just a bad situation for everyone involved.
Look, the NFL is a very patient and forgiving entity, and we've seen people miss a year and come back and try to reinvent themselves. Josh Gordon's a perfect example. He hasn't had the sort of off-field issues, but he has admitted to substance abuse, and the Patriots have stuck by him. And that's a perfect example of someone with a load of talent who is trying to do the right things, but is struggling off the field, and the Patriots are willing to help him. AB, it just doesn't seem to get through to him that these are the things you have to do. We saw Drew Rosenhaus talk about it during Hard Knocks back in August, explaining to John Gruden, look, man, we're not handling this the right way. I understand that with the hot air balloon and the helmet issue and the feet issue. And you would imagine, as Brinson pointed out, if you can't go to New England and do what Bill Belichick needs you to do. You saw Bill Belichick's face in that press conference. I can only imagine what went through his mind and what came out of his mouth when he heard that Antonio Brown had been sending those texts. So he has to take a year off, I would imagine. I can't imagine anyone's going to sign him. We'll see. But when he comes back, he has to be a different person. We'll have to say all the right things. And then at the end of the day, he has to work hard on the field.
Interesting to hear Ben Volin over at the Boston Globe saying the Patriots releasing Brown before owing him a $5 million signing bonus payment on Monday sets up possibly for Brown to file a grievance or challenge it in court, something to monitor. And also here, in terms of the Superbook there, the Patriots now dumping Antonio Brown has their Super Bowl chances go from 3-1 to 4-1. That's kind of where I want to go with this next conversation here. And Ryan, I'll start with you, John and Will, sort of your thoughts, what this does to the Patriots and their quest to go back and win the Super Bowl.
I'm smirking, Tommy, because it doesn't do anything. I mean, let's be real. Our guy Stephen O sent out an email after Antonio Brown was released and said, there are no changes. I have them winning still close to 13 games, I have them winning the division, the AFC, and they're a high-percentage team to go to the Super Bowl, and I think that's exactly where we're at. Antonio Brown was a luxury. And one thing we're sort of overlooking here is that, yes, the offense starts with Tom Brady, Julian Edelman. We know all that. Josh Gordon's back. The defense is actually better than the offense right now. According to our buddies at Football Outsiders, the defense is #1 in the NFL. The offense is #4. They are dominating. We saw them take over the Steelers game. They beat the JV team down there in South Florida. They're a team, that the defense you can build around, even if you don't have Antonio Brown, which they didn't need anyway.
Yeah, you know, when this whole situation started, when the lawsuit came out last week, the Patriots originally said, hey, we're going to let this play out. We're going to let the NFL investigate, and then we'll do whatever the NFL wants. And so, obviously, you have new things come to light, and the Patriots decide enough is enough. And I think a big reason they don't need him. This is not a player they need at all. They didn't have him in training camp. They didn't have him in week 1 when they blew out the Steelers 30-3. You take away his touchdown he scored against the Dolphins in week 2. They win 36-0. I mean, this is just a guy who, like Ryan said, was an absolute luxury on the roster. The offense is going to function just fine without him. They still have Josh Gordon. They still have Julian Edelman. I don't think Tom Brady's going to have any issues throwing to those guys. We've seen what he can do. Julian Edelman was the MVP of the Super Bowl. So if I'm the Patriots, or if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm not worried at all about my Super Bowl chances with Antonio Brown no longer on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Patriots are probably going to, you know, this is probably a reverse springboard, Tommy, for them to crater into oblivion, They'll probably lose their next 6 games, won't win the AFC East, maybe finish behind the Dolphins, and the dynasty will be crumbled and dead and won't exist. No, I'm just kidding. None of that's going to happen. The Patriots are still going to win the division. They're going to cakewalk to it. They're minus 1,200 at FanDuel right now in terms of winning the division and basically everywhere in Vegas. They are still the favorite. The reality of the Antonio Brown situation all along is that Bill Belichick saw a very talented player who he believed could come into Foxborough, like so many other players before him, and try to make it work from an off-field standpoint, that he would clean up his act, that he would be a good teammate, that he would be a better person off the field, and that he would engage in a football sense with Tom Brady, and he would play really well and help take that offense over the top. I mean, in theory, you can understand how it could happen. We've been yo-yoing back and forth for 2.5 weeks on this, understandably, because any other team bringing him in might lead you to believe it would be a disaster. The Patriots get the benefit of the doubt, and I don't want to give them credit here, but they did cut ties. You know, they did it quickly. They're not messing around, and that should tell you just how serious this situation is for Antonio Brown, that Bill Belichick is not suffering any more of this.
It's just interesting, and Will, you kind of answered what I was trying to follow up, because all of you guys saying Antonio Brown a luxury. The Patriots were going to be good anyway, and yet they took this risk, and do they know that it was going to be to this, severity and it was going to be this bad? I certainly don't think so, but what do you think about even the process now, looking back 11 days or even before that? Because people are like, oh, they're so smart, they didn't have to do the trade because the Steelers didn't have to give up any picks, and they let Oakland deal with that stuff. I mean, when you look at it now, the risk there doesn't seem like it was ever needed in the first place.
Of course it wasn't. And look, Ryan knows that I don't like to pat myself on the back. I'm a very humble host of a podcast, just like to grind along. But I said this. I said when he was signed, I wouldn't be surprised if he was gone by week 2. Now it was a week off, but I truly believe that. I thought that given what we had seen from Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh, like when the guy wants to play for a winning organization, the Steelers haven't been below 500 since he got there. I mean, he's playing for a Hall of Fame quarterback. What more did he want? And it leads you to believe that he was not going to be happy and not going to be not happy. He's not going to be satisfied off the field. He's not going to stop doing whatever he was doing off the field just because he landed in a great place like New England with the Hall of Fame quarterback. He already had all of that. And he went to Oakland, and it turned out to be a whole disaster. So the idea that he was just going to come to New England, it would be fine, and everything would work out never really made sense to me. Could have been wrong, but in the end, I feel like I ended up being on the right side of history here, although for different reasons, the Patriots ultimately decided to get rid of him. I still don't understand, Tommy, why they played him in week 2. To me, it made no sense. You didn't need to do it, and now you unnecessarily open yourself up to having him on the roster in case of a possible suspension, which didn't happen thanks to releasing him.
Yeah, the more I
was actually on the other end.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sorry, Tommy. I was on the other end of what Brinson thought was going to happen. I actually was making the case that AB Kaiser Sosa'd his way out of Oakland just like he did in Pittsburgh. He was limping around like he didn't know what was going on, and then once he gets what he wants, he's walking straight and pulling the strings. Turns out that wasn't the case at all. He got his wish to go to New England, and as Brinson pointed out, we saw how that played out. Bill Belichick is not going to suffer fools, and Antonio Brown is now out of a job because of it.
Ryan, he is not going to suffer fools, but the other part of this is that, look, Bill Belichick has the iron fist of the Patriots organization. He has final say on all personnel decisions. He watched for 8 months the Antonio Brown show go crazy in Pittsburgh, go wild in Oakland, to the point where, hey, both these teams wanted to get rid of this guy. So Bill Belichick thought he could fix that, or thought he could make that work in New England like he's done so many times before. And this is a decision that absolutely blew up in his face. And I'll be interested if somebody does ask him that on Sunday or Monday, if he felt that the signing Antonio Brown was worth the 11 days of drama that came with it. So this one is definitely, I think, one that Bill Belichick's going to regret. But again, if the Patriots end the season with the Lombardi Trophy, he's not even going to think about this 5 years down the road.
Guys, Drew Rosenhaus has taken to Twitter, and it's a little bit of a carbon copy of the Oakland statement. Unfortunate things didn't work out with the Patriots, but Antonio is healthy and looking forward to his next opportunity in the NFL. He wants to play the game he loves and hopes to play for another team soon. We're running out of time, about 15 seconds for each of you. Start with Will. Drew Rosenhaus's comments here.
He's not playing for another team. The NFL is going to be investigating him. Bill Belichick wouldn't take a chance on him anymore. No one else in the NFL will either.
I got 2 words for you, Tommy. Next question.
Hey, the NFL started their investigation last week. maybe another month, 2 months. I'll be shocked if he's back in the NFL. Rosenhaus will work a miracle if that happens.
All right, you guys have done so many emergency podcasts. I feel like this was a de facto Pick Six Pod emergency podcast. For Will Brinson, John Breach, and Ryan Wilson, gentlemen, thank you very much here on CBS Sports HQ. Keep it right here. We're going to continue that Antonio Brown news. Again, he's one and done with the New England Patriots, no longer with the team.